Hello, hi, hola, Brian here. It's been a while. Today I'm using this thing, and you'll hear my nose. So sorry. Audacity, that's what we're using, and I'm doing an actual project for an audiobook. And then I chose my favorite bits and kind of Frankenstein them together. And now that's what this is. We don't need to see that yet. This is the first recording, and then I took a little breath and read the thing again. So I've got these, which are track 1, track 2, track 1, track 2, track 1, track 2, track 1, back and forth. And this is actually a preview of the audiobook that I'm going to be doing. And so I'm going to press Control F in Audacity, and I've found that's nice, and it fills the screen with the full range of the project itself. Now I know that this has sort of the slow rhythm for the Western audiobook that I'm gonna do a Kickstarter for. A lot of people once said, make your voice happen. Let's see if you can hear this.
He was on a hill beyond the upper end of the camp, kneeling beside an open grave.
Yep, we can hear it. Now that old man, believe it or not, is me. If you right-click this, you can change that to logarithmic decibels, and that's something that lets you really get a good look at everything. I can highlight this. Control E will zoom to the selection that you have. And effect click removal will do the whole minute and a half here and apply that. And something that I don't like to do, which I'm going to tell you right now how you can do, we don't need that visible, is in order to access a function that you use quite frequently in Audacity, you can do edit, preferences, shortcuts, search for the name of the thing that you use pretty often. Whoops, and I do click removal pretty often. Repeating is Control R, but click removal itself has no shortcut, has no hotkey. But if I press Shift C and set it, it is now my number one way to remove clicks from whatever it is that I am working on. So amplify is something that is pretty useful, and I like to do a peak of -3 because that's sort of an industry standard. And there it is, amplified. But wouldn't it be nice if we could see the shortcut for amplify? So I type in amplify, and it's not there. So I can create it, and I tend to do that, Shift plus apostrophe. I will set it and say OK. Wonderful. There are two others that I enjoy doing. Sometimes when I combine two clips and they're just a little bit out of whack, fading out from one is Shift O, and fading in to the next, which I make into Shift I. That, for me, works wonderfully. So if I select a piece of audio and I press Shift I, it fades in.
And in his clasped hands, uplifted high above his head, he held a naked...
P is pause, so it will stop where you are. But if you press P in Audacity and pause the playback at a certain section, you can't do certain functions because it's not actually stopped the playback. All right, now how do you find your voice in here? My voice, even though these headphones don't really, I found they don't really put my voice where it belongs. You can see your voice. Did you know that? So if you use Audacity, let's see if I can do this right on the first try. And we change this to spectrogram. You can scroll the track with Shift mouse wheel. All right. You can zoom in on the track with Control mouse wheel. And if you ever need to get it back to normal, remember you can press Control F or Control E if you have a selection. If you have no selection, then Control E throws a error. Now, those two commands, Shift mouse wheel and Control mouse wheel, they also work here on this measurement, on this graduated margin. I just made that up. That sounds so professional. It's a graduated margin, by George. I'm going to zoom in. So Control mouse wheel, and I zoom in to the megahertz. Look at that. It is not repixelated, it does not re-render, but it will get you a closer look instead of having to pull this all the way down to the bottom of your desk. Shift mouse wheel also goes up and down that graduated margin. Graduated margin. So my voice, let's give a listen.
The waning light, which sifted through the long-plumed tassels of the digger pines, showed a little group of Mexicans standing at some distance, listening in frightened silence.
That's a very tense selection, by the way, very tense. Okay, so the power of sound is indicated by the brightness of the spectrogram. Oops, I just selected the whole thing. The intensity of it down there. So you can see that my voice is pretty low. When I do select a track or a piece of track, and I go to effect and I do something like the filter curve, the standards of presets and settings tend to affect my voice and make it quiet. I'd like to save this. Let's save this. Can I save this? I've saved it, right? Saved preset. My voice. So look where we are. 40 hertz to 100 hertz. I say, please make that range quieter. Anything over 100 hertz, don't bother changing the volume. Leave it at 0 decibels, like make no change. It doesn't mean put it to 0 decibels. It means don't affect it. My voice works well for me. So watch the bottom of the spectrograph. The bottom of the spectrograph, if you paid really careful attention, a lot of interference disappeared. It got so quiet, it had its power taken away. Here is before.
There, where the candles were twinkling in the humming camp.
And here is after.
There, where the candles were twinkling in the humming camp. The waning.
That to me sounds with the headphones on, which are not the world's greatest headphones. They're gaming headphones for talking to your friends and whatever people do in video games. It shows that a lot of the deep rumble, perhaps traffic outside, perhaps the neighbor's refrigerator, your own refrigerator rumbling away in the room or the next room, those noises have been removed, which you can hear with the headphones. I now want to put some bass back into my own voice, and I know that 2 tends to be okay, and it'll do just that. That's a great way to find your voice and be able to select the pieces that are important to maintaining your voice and removing the sounds that are around your voice. My voice is a little deeper than most, so for me it's kind of a challenge. Another part of finding the voice is listening carefully to the background sound in general. That is a hiss. We could all maybe hear the hiss. Perhaps for you it was completely silent because you're just like watching on a cell phone on the train or something like that. Effect and noise reduction. You take that little piece of selection that you have, and now in order to clean up the entire clip, you use the same special effect, but now the selection is the entire selection, or the entire clip. There go the words. Yep. And it's a whole lot cleaner. So yeah, great. But what about, it still looks spiky. Could we not have it spiky? Can we not have it spiky? Here, the bass boost has thrown it beyond the maximum of -3. So I'm going to go back and do the entire thing again to -3. And I'm going to use something called a limiter, which is really great. And that limiter will take a look at the entire selection and it will pump it up 2 decibels. No matter what the volume is, it'll pump it up 2 decibels. And then it will softly chop it down to -3. So I've already set everything to -3. So it will take something that's -3 and puff it up to -1 and then cut it back down. And what I'm hoping is that will affect basically the S's and the hisses and the
The waning
clicks.
light, which sifted.
There, the word sifted. That's perfect because that S doesn't have to be so much louder than everything around it.
Which sifted through the.
Ooh, sifted. Like I nail that S. I bring it home. That is my Southwestern United States fake accent. I'm looking for people to give me tips on how to do a better accent for Southwest United States. Now that we have brought the levels of everything up, we want to have a way of seeing how we're doing overall. If you measure the RMS, it's kind of this magic noise number of the entire selection, in this case, the entire 1.5 minutes, and it's set to -22. That's overall a little too quiet for me because look at this. It's at -3.2 decibels, and it is next to audio that's -10. Now, the difference between measurements in something like drawing or painting or photography is called contrast, and that's good. The difference in audio between something that is at an optimal volume and something that is at a quiet volume
Still lingered here among the stiff branched.
that's bad. You don't want to have that contrast in audio. This is -11. So people are cranking their volume knobs up and down and up and down, and this is at -4. It's right next to a -11. So let's focus in on that. This is that clip.
Where the candles were twinkling in the humming camp. The waning light.
Okay, so it sounds like I'm on a new paragraph. So here I close up a paragraph, and I'm reading it very theatrically on purpose for the Kickstarter campaign because it's like supposed to be kind of dramatized, but light radio play or light theater. So here I close it out because that's how I read it. But I don't need people to suffer trying to hear it. So how can I bring this up but keep this the same? Because the limiter that we just used brings everything up and then cuts it all down if it exceeds a certain value. There is something that's complicated, and I won't overly discuss it. It's called compressor, and it takes things that are quiet, like our -11 and such, and it gives them a boost. And then it identifies the volumes that are high, and it does not give them a boost. And that quality of that boost is expressed as a ratio so that quieter gets more boost and louder gets less boost. And when I compress based on peaks, I, for my deeper voice, get a better result. Watch behind. There. And now,
Where the candles were twinkling in the humming camp. The waning light.
okay, we know that the peak of this used to be -4. Now it's really loud at -1.2. But between 4 and 11 was a difference of 7 decibels. So that's 1.2, and this is now 2.7. So it has now put a 1.5 decibel difference between my quiet speak
Where the candles were twinkling in the humming camp.
and the loud speak that happened at the beginning of the next paragraph. So to my ears, this is not distorted. This does not sound like I'm cranking up a whisper.
Where the candles were twinkling.
Okay? That sounds okay to me. And it's exactly what I'm going to do. So I hope it sounds okay to you too. I've chosen to pump the volume on certain things. So what's the volume on the area that we made represent silence? It's still quiet. Why is it still quiet? I can tell you a little bit.
He was on a hill.
All right, so why is it still quiet? It's because when we used compressor, we said go find quiet noises and make them louder, but the louder noises don't affect those. There's a floor, and that floor is minus 50 decibels. 50 is where this is. Now, was it at 50 or 60 before I did compressor? I'm actually not sure. I should have measured that. I hope one of you gets in touch with me about doing voices for your 3D animation. I said that we were going to do a little bit more limiter. Let's do some limiter right now. Actually, first, let's knock this down to -3. And let's assume that some of these peaks, like what I'm looking at right now,
He spoke to the dead man.
is like the letter S, or something that's not necessary to have it so loud. He spoke, it says, and that comes in at -3.9, and it is sitting next to -7.3. So we would love to bring those values closer together because, like I said, in paintings and photography and your drawings, contrast is really good for visual literacy. But contrast in audio, it's great at the concert. There's a lot of dynamic sound and flavor and depth. But for audio book purposes or a character in an animation, that kind of contrast in sound, dynamic, can be a little too complicated on the hardware, which is using software to quickly redetermine the difference between those things. Oh, I'll tell you more about that some other time. So that was, I don't even know if I remember what that was, but now it's a 3.3. Talking and doing. It's been 3 years since I've done this for you. 5.3, so a difference of 2 decibels. If I remember correctly, the other one was 6 decibels. Great. I might use compressor one more time. Ready? You wouldn't think it's possible, but let's try it. Oh, wow. Wow. Right? Wow. Now it's like all gotten a haircut. Wow. What do you think? You want to hear a part? Let's go to the end.
Bright red, with
Red.
the blood of 20 men of Murphy's Diggins.
What?
And after that,
Yeah?
to devote his life
Oh.
to killing Americans.
What? Yeah, this is a dangerous story. I'm going to have so much fun recording this audiobook. I hope that you want to join the Kickstarter and be a part of this, because for me, this is like a story in the public domain that deserves some telling. What do we have here? That's not -50, but you know what I can do? Shift O and fade out. It's good to be back. Thanks for watching.
He was on a hill beyond the upper end of the camp, kneeling beside an open grave, and in his clasped hands, uplifted high above his head, he held a naked bowie knife. Some light still lingered here among the stiff-branched digger pines, a faint reflection of the sunset far beyond the flatlands of the San Joaquin Valley. It shone upon his face, revealing a multitude of lines so deeply scored, so terrible in their proclamation of deadly hate, that the sight of them would have startled the most case-hardened member of the crowds down there where the candles were twinkling in the humming camp.